So this is an official meeting for the Board of Selectmen, and I need a motion to accept the agenda and call the meeting to order. Second by Mr. Danahy. All in favor? Aye. So first I would like to welcome all of you and thank you for coming out this evening, especially in the rain. As you all know, we are all here to discuss the future site location of the new senior center for the town of Scituate. Many members of the board had asked that we get some additional input from the public, as well as invite our Council on Aging, who is down here to the folks left and our right. The entire board is here. We really wanted to hear from them, as well as hear from some more of the public directly with regards to the different sites. As you know, we put out a survey where we had over 500 residents respond to us, so we have some statistics that we can share with you as well, breaking down over 500 very unique comments and tried to cull that into some logic and some percentages to see what the feeling really was out there from the folks that actually did take the survey. So for those of you that are here this evening that took the survey, I want to say thank you. And thank you to those who aren't here that took the survey. It certainly was helpful. So tonight, the goal really is to decide on a site, period. So I want to just make that clear because that is really what the charge was for the survey, as well as for the analysis that we had done earlier in the summer, where many of you joined us at the EOC to listen to the results of those different site attributes and the costs and the different characteristics of the sites. So just to review, the 4 sites that are in consideration are the Purple Dinosaur site, Country Way, Branch Street, which is behind the library, the Driftway site, which is a piece of land that is currently owned by the Scituate Housing Authority, down sort of by the wind turbine there. And then the Gates School site, which, as you know, has been vacated by school children, but is currently being semi-occupied by our recreation department. And we just redid the gym floor there as well, so if you have a chance, go take a look. So with that, I think what we will do first is really to hear from Linda Hayes, John Miller, and the rest of the committee with regards to the process and what your committee has discussed and what you can share with us. Linda?
Hello? Okay, this is on. So first I just want to say hello. Hi, my name is Linda Hayes. I'm director of the Senior Center here in Scituate. Thanks for having us here today. So the board took very seriously, of course, the charge from you for determining a recommendation, opinion, perhaps for what we might have found to be a most suitable site for a proposed new senior center, more than just whether a building could be placed on the property, of course, but considerations that might make one site a little bit more ideal for some of our greater needs or wants in a new facility, which of course the board is aware of through me and through meetings. So I want to commend and thank them very much for their efforts and due diligence. They really did quite a bit of work for this. As you all know, of course, we have intelligent people with various expertise on the board who've lived in the community and watched or been involved in other successful projects for Scituate, many of them, along now with a couple of new board members who were not part of the process up to this point. We lost a couple who were and then gained, so we've brought them up to speed a little bit. And I also would acknowledge Joel Bardman's assistance with clarifying a lot of things for us. So he really joined us at least a couple of times from the first time he had presented the findings from the feasibility study. So we all want this to be a decision and a project that we can put forth to the community with confidence and know that the product will be getting, deserves their tax dollars and supports the type of senior center that the seniors and the community really deserve. So we really took this charge very, very seriously. So I could introduce the board. I have John Miller with me, of course, who's the chairman, and I'm going to turn it over to him. I also have Janice Lindblom, Gordon Price, Janice Desmond, Leslie James, Helen Jablonski, Caitlin Coyle, one of our newest members, Lucille Sorrentino, and Henry Ye, also our newest member. So really happy to have this board as knowledgeable as they are and as helpful as they have been. John started on the process that they went through to do this.
I'm John Miller, I'm the board chair of the Council on Aging. Where do we start? What did we do? We as a board grabbed a hold of the feasibility study that was presented by Joe Bartman. We obviously attended, I think, all of his presentations. Initially, his first presentation was to the Board of Selectmen of the Fire and Safety Building. So we all witnessed those presentations, delved into the analysis that he provided, and began to talk. It must have been July, we decided that it would be beneficial for us as a board to literally walk the sites as much as possible. So over the period of a week or two, I think most everyone here was able to participate in that. So we walked the sites. We walked three of the four sites. We walked the Driftway site that I call the Driftway site. We walked the Gates site. And we walked the Library Branch Street site. I think it was pretty unanimous right off the bat that no one really favored the purple dinosaur. And we obviously followed some of Bartman's recommendations, and he had a little bit of pros and cons on every single site, and every single site does have pros and cons. Whether it's traffic, whether it's cost, whether it's what's on the buildings, what's on the site, whether it's grading, whether it's et cetera, et cetera. But all of the sites were determined by the architect to be buildable. So we walked each of those sites. When we walked the library site to try to determine kind of where things fit there, as well as looking at where there's going to be a new senior housing complex being put up back in there. We walked the Kent Street site, knowing that that was an open space that was without encumbrances, I guess, if you will, in terms of other buildings that are on it. And we walked the Gates campus to try to pinpoint kind of where he was looking and why. So again, each site had various pros and cons, whether it's, again, traffic flow, demolition, having to remove something, uncertainties, cost, all those factors came into play. After walking the sites, we met and did discuss as a group where our impressions, what we thought, what we felt, based on feedback that we had gotten over the month or so of July, as well as our hands-on approach. We were actually hosted by our acting interim town administrator here, Al, walked us on a couple of those sites, or 3 of the 4, I think, right? We tried to whittle down what we felt were the net benefits, preferences of our group. Cost was certainly an issue, as well as but as well as uncertainty as to what might else be going on certain sites, such as Gates, as well as sort of congestion, like what feels like it's too crowded, not crowded, has space, doesn't have space. Anyways, long-winded answer. We as a group favored, because of some of those issues, cost, lack of questions, if you will, or uncertainty. We favored the Kent Street Driftway site, and then left ourselves open-minded to listen and talk to more people and try to come up with, what works. Subsequently, as Maura, I think, has mentioned, we've had a survey that's gone out and been responded to by over 1,100 residents, as well as some verbal responses by over 500 members. We actually just, I think, Sean, you just gave us a summary, or Karen just gave us a summary of some of that we didn't have. So there's been new data points that have come on board. There have been feedback from residents in terms of who favors what, where, and when. It's the position of our board that it's time, that the community is ready for a new senior center, that the community deserves a new senior center. So we're happy to move forward in any number of different directions almost to get to that objective. So that sort of brings us up to date, I think, in terms of where we are. We've tried to look at all the data, all the survey information, et cetera. I know that there are questions not only from the board, but I'm sure the audience in terms of other options. And maybe you folks might address some of those things, such as, we always get questions about, well, why aren't we using the Harbor Community Building? Or earlier in the summer, why aren't we thinking about the medical building on the corner of Driftway? I think some of those questions have been answered. One's been taken off the table because of the purchase. Harbor Community Building is not deeded to be used, in my understanding, for this kind of a community process, community gathering. But maybe you guys can address some of that. But so that kind of brings us up to date.
Does anybody have any questions for John?
I mean, I'll be here. So.
No, thank you, John. Is there anyone else from the board that has any comments or questions? I just want to make sure there's ample time.
Gordon Price, Vice Chair. As most of you know, I've been involved in this project for about 15 years. Never would I thought I would ever want to use a senior center. Now I know I need to use a senior center. But in addition to all the things that JD mentioned, we also looked at previous surveys. This project has been surveyed to death. There have been at least 6 surveys done in conjunction with reuse, and Karen Pritchard chaired that committee, master plan. So the need for a senior center has been well looked at. I think it's the board's opinion that we don't need to do any more surveys. I hope that we are going to move forward with this. But the background information that Linda and JD and the committee has been exhaustive. We spent a lot of time on it, and I think now we're beginning to see some movement that hopefully this will become a reality in the near future. So I want to thank the board for your efforts to keep moving this forward. Hopefully we continue on that vein. Thank you.
I think what I'll do, might be some of these statistics from the survey that might help with some of the discussion tonight. Some of the consideration that many of us have considered. We covered this in a Board of Selectmen meeting a couple of weeks back, but I'll just share some of it. We had over 565 comments throughout the survey, and somebody graciously went through every single comment. Many of us did, but somebody went through and actually categorized all of them, which was very helpful. The first sort of percentage that jumps out, the largest percentage, is that 25% of the respondents want us to use the buildings that we have. And that varied from a couple of different buildings, just as John and Dr. Price have alluded to. Things like renovate gates for the senior center or other uses, why not Pier 44, which is the Harbor Community Building, or renovate and use some existing building that we have. So a lot of concern, obviously, for bringing another building online. 22% of the respondents are very enthusiastic for a new senior center, want to get it done, it's long overdue. I think we can all agree on that. 21% don't want to spend money. So that's going to be a little tough, because I think we all know that this is going to cost all of us some money, and we're prepared to talk a little bit about that tonight, just very high level, so what sort of impacts it may have. 6% said that they will support it if it's a community center and a multi-purpose facility. 4% want more information with regards to a town master plan, facility plan, and where the senior center fits in there. Another 4% had concerns about parking and traffic. Another 3% thought that having it located near a town center, i.e. senior housing and or the library, so it was 3% of respondents thought that that was important. 2% did not want to support it at the expense of supporting fields and schools, so that really is something that is small, 13 people. Another 2% wants a new building, a new construction, and then 11% were very thankful for the survey, sell any unused buildings, or there was no use for a senior center at all. So I think if you can kind of summarize the larger percentage of respondents, it's we want to be mindful of the costs, where we put it, but obviously it's a great need, and I think I can speak for the board and say that we all agree that it's a great need and it's time to move forward. So I think with that, why don't we take site by site and maybe go through pros and cons where the board feels, and I think it makes sense to have sort of a sense of where we are right now, and then I'll open it up if folks want to come down to the microphone, because we really want to hear from you. And if the board is in agreement to proceed that way, or if you would prefer to hear from residents first, just let me know. So let's start with the easy one first. Purple dinosaur. I think we can take that off the table. Are we in agreement with that? That was easy. So we'll take that off the table. And the next one, why don't we go to the Driftway site down by Kent Street? And I don't know, Mr. Denton, did you want to start, or item, cut you off right there, sorry.
No, I got it. Can everybody hear me? Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for coming. One of the things I have to say about the Driftway site is I've actually thought about this for a number of years, and as liaison in the past to the Council on Aging, I've actually tried to encourage that site. Problem number one with the site is we're going to have to do a land swap. Presently owned by the Scituate Housing Authority, and so in conjunction with that site, we have to swap land. Now, we've done that before, and I don't see that as a major problem, because the Housing Authority has already said that they will be willing to do just that. And the land they'd probably be looking for happens to be the excess land behind the proposed elderly housing at Central School, and there's land behind that that the town owns. And that's probably the site they'd be looking at, because if they're going to add on to or further grow senior housing, that's not a bad location for them. So that's number one that I don't have an issue with. Although some people might think about that, and there might be some naysayers out there who say it's a major problem. I don't see that as a problem from a site perspective. From a cost perspective, it tends to be one of the cheaper sites to be able to develop from the town, from the taxpayer. For people sitting around here who might say, well, can we get this site passed at town meeting and also through an override? That is a very valid consideration for those people sitting here who want to senior center. But cost alone is not what I'm looking at, and I think that we have to look at all the other factors that we factor into it. I do like the location. It's on the Driftway. The Driftway, obviously, years ago was more of an industrial site with sand and gravel, but it's no longer. We start off as a gateway from the roundabout, and in the future, the gateway on the Driftway is going to become much more palatable as Greenbush begins to develop through the EDC, through the town, through different businesses. It's going to be a very nice gateway into Scituate that draws you further into the harbor. And then as we go further down, yes, there's the transfer station. But that site in the future can always be changed. We can move it. We can do curbside pickup. We don't know what's going to happen, but the town owns it, and that's a very good thing for the future. It also owns the land in front of the solar array. At one point, we tried to negotiate an OCC, the school, Massasoit, to bring the school there. I had failed, but that site's always open for the future. So as you begin to work your way down the driftway into the harbor, you finally get to this location, which is actually a very beautiful location. I don't believe it has any vista or view. You might get some views of Scituate Country Club, which is very pretty, and certainly maybe some views of the, I'm not sure if it's the 14th hole or the Little's Walk, but certainly that accessibility is great when you're on the driftway, which I think is a good thing from the driving standpoint. But you don't have any senior housing. You don't have any elderly housing. But it is on, shall we say right now, GATRA. But I would not bank on GATRA being one in the future, because you never know whether it's going to be used. So that's a negative to some. And then I look at, the way it could be configured on the site. I think it's a great location. So you could have people driving there, you could have bus service there, and you're close to downtown, which is not a bad option. And you've got the bike path, which I think is a very positive. So from that standpoint, I do like the site. And right now, that is one of the sites that I'm conflicted with. So I do see it as a positive, but I'm not looking at the cost as the be-all, end-all. Because my feeling on any public building, any institution that's for the benefit of the public, all of us, that we don't look short-sighted for just the cost purpose. But we also don't look at it and say, well, we need to spend every dollar for the people. We have to manage it properly, not just for ourselves, but for the future. So I would tell you right now, the Driftway is certainly one of the sites that I'm looking at. I think it's a good site, and it's a solid site.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming again. The Driftway site is not in my top sites. In fact, I don't like it at all. I think that it's isolated. It's not near other functionality of the town. I think the speed limit on the Driftway would be an issue with stuff going on there. And I specifically don't like the fact that it's near the windmill and it's near Go Green, which has odors of mulch. And, if people are going to go there and they're going to try and enjoy themselves, specifically outside, I just think that there'll be complaints shortly thereafter about complaints we have about the windmill right now, and complaints we'll have about the odors coming from Go Green and maybe the waste treatment. So I don't like that site as a long-term place for this.
Thank you.
I don't want to sound like I'm repeating Tony, but as soon as John started talking, I don't like the site at all. It's not off the beaten path. It's not centrally located. It says there are water views. There are not going to be any water views. I was just looking through all the material about how much acreage there is. But again, like Tony said, Kent Street, people traveling fast now, it's a main road. It's the cheapest, but only 10–15%, something like that. So I think if we're going to build a site, we're going to do it right, even if it takes a little longer. I don't think this is not my choice.
I agree that my first choice would be to have the senior center in a comprehensive plan that makes it a centerpiece of our community. That would lean me towards the gate site. But I also agree that there are a lot of questions. I think that you're right about the uncertainty of that site makes it concerning. In a perfect world, I would like to have that whole site and exactly what's going to happen there. That said, we waited too long, and I think we need to put forth something that the community can consider and make a choice. I am not opposed to the Kent Street. I think that I listened to the Council on Aging. We've spent a lot of time on this, and have your population in mind, so I take that very seriously as far as your choice. I do agree with John. I think that it may be a little isolated now, but we are growing, and there have been so many improvements along that way that I don't see that as originally I thought that as an appealing to it, but not so much anymore. So honestly, I think, as you said, JD, there's pros and cons on every site. I'm not the dinosaur. I'm not a fan of the library site. I think it will be too congested, and especially with the new development there. So to me, it really comes down to the gates or Driftway.
Thank you.
Staying on the Driftway for a moment, and just wrapping up, I went through the pros and cons in my head as well, and I think the Council on Aging brought up a lot of good points, which was accessibility, it's easy, there don't appear to be a lot of obstacles or barriers. There are some, in my mind, that are barriers. One is that it is in a floodplain, so that's a concern to me. Another one, a concern for me, is that this land, is my understanding, was originally deeded for affordable housing from the family to the Scituate Housing Authority. I'd like to honor that. So that is one main reason why I am not in the camp for the Kent Street site, specifically because of that deed and that wish of that family for that to be affordable housing. And while it is lower in cost, a lot of that is because it's an easy in-out with regards to getting through construction, but some of the other higher construction costs that you may see at a gates is because we have to replace a field that's there. And we have other resources, financial resources, to do that with the CPC funds. So it wouldn't be added on to your tax roll or into the financial solution. So we have some options with that. So for me, that levels out a bit the costs. And also when we look at these costs, I think it's important that we all understand that they're estimates, that there has been no design done. So while they're good estimates and they are based on some good information and obviously some great detail, they are estimates for us to work with. So that's where I sit with regards to the Driftway. It certainly has some pros, but for me, the cons really, really outweigh. I do agree that I feel it is more isolated. I think moving the senior center into the center of town is so important because it's just much more accessible for folks on the west end, North Scituate. I think when we put things down in the harbor, I know we say if we build it, they will come, but I fear we won't get as much usage as we really could if it is more centrally located, and I would love to see it in the central portion of Scituate. And ma'am, if you could just say your name and address, that'd be great.
My name is Gloria Smith.
And address?
A senior center. I've never done this.
I know, it's new.
Okay, huh?
Address.
Address is in Old Country Way, right near you. Yeah. And if you're going to have a lot of fun. What?
It's just for the record, ma'am.
Well, I was going to say mine. Then I probably forgot. Okay, so we've got the brewery in Greenbush, and with a lot of traffic and a lot of folk hanging around, probably and drinking. The parking is not good. We're long overdue for a senior center, which is terrible for Scituate. And it doesn't matter where it is, because people will find it and go to the senior center. We only hold 40 people in there. And Linda Hayes has done so much for Scituate that I think it's all this delay is a bunch of baloney. You've got the Widows Walk over there, and what about those fellas that play golf and drink and then come out there? They may be not good drivers when they do that.
Point of order, please. We want to be civil and talk about the options. If you have a comment on the location, that would be great. I think we're all here to move this initiative forward. You have the support of us? Okay. You like the Driftway?
Driftway, I think, is the best place. I can remember not any businesses on Driftway. Now we do have some businesses on Driftway. We had the Bobby Drew's breakfast place. So what's with, it's a lot of space over there for people to drive. The seniors can drive good, or they wouldn't be out.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as parking, there'll be plenty of parking. They'll bring more seniors out. I live at Wheeler Park, and I see a lot of them that need to get out.
Gloria, I want to ask you a question.
Yes.
What's most important to you, to get it built or the location? It sounds like you want it built as ASAP.
Well, we're long overdue.
Okay, so if is it
All the
location?
centers in different towns are beautiful. We got a crap hole. That's what it is. It's a shame for Scituate.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir, name and address, please.
My
Thank
name's
you.
Tom McCusker at 50 Cannon Pasture Lane. I'm 62, so I'm just starting to get into the senior stuff. When I first came to the meeting the last time, the Driftway would have been the last on my list. It was the only one on my list after I left that meeting. And I think, I agree the library is too crowded. Dinosaur Park, I don't know why they talk about fields anyway, when you're going to take another field out. I want to see the gates, I think, an open option there to sell the property. If you put a senior center there, you're cutting down what you can sell over there. And I think the Driftway is a good thing. Me and my wife went over and walked the site. Tony was talking about the stink from the mulch place there. Like John said, they start developing there. They're on a lease with the land. They're going to be short-lived, I think, if they really do start developing the Driftway, because nobody wants the smell anyway. But when we were down there, we didn't get any snow. We were walking around, and the cost, you could say cost isn't the only thing, but from the figures that I remember when the people were here before, the architects and stuff, that's 25% less than, or over 25% less than the other sites. That's, talking about $3 million to be able to walk to the library. There was a lot of money for that convenience. And I think the Driftway's got a lot of room to expand. One of the guys who was here before was talking about paths all through there. You can connect to the walking paths and all that stuff. But it's just, when it comes down to getting funding for it, you start going over $10 million, and I think it's going to be a big, big, big problem. That's my thing, when we get about the finance, I got something for that too.
Thank you. Name and address, please.
Hi, Diane Wells, 117 Gilson Road. I'd like to speak to the point you brought up about the odors in the area. I live in that immediate area, and I go past that location several times a day. It's not a problem as far as that's concerned. Once in a while in the spring, you get an odor from Go Green. It's more of a fertilizer type of odor. I've never had a problem with that. And again, I'm in very close proximity to that. Secondly, when we're talking about that being used for housing, I think that would be more of a problem in there because there's been a lot of objections in the past to the windmill in close proximity to housing, whereas I do agree that we should honor a bequest from a family for that purpose. But there has been research done, I don't have it with me tonight, that would be a strong opposition to that from a regulatory standpoint and health standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gordon Price again. The comment and the question. It concerns me that the Council on Aging was charged to look at 4 sites. One of them was the Kent Street site. And in the last 24 hours, we're now told that there's a deed restriction on that site. That concerns, I think, all of the committee. You asked us to look at the site. We spent a lot of time, a lot of effort looking at it, as well as others. And now to be told that there's a deed restriction on the site doesn't make. So do we know for sure that there is a deed restriction on the site?
I don't know that So it's my understanding that it was deeded to the Scituate Housing Authority for that reason, but the Scituate Housing Authority has already met with Al and folks and has agreed that they're willing to swap it. So, yeah, it would be a process. It's going to be an added additional process to it. So I apologize if you didn't know that. It's not, yeah, it's owned by Scituate Housing Authority, not the town, the land.
But if there are some complications with transferring it to the town, I think we should have been made aware of that 6 months ago. And we would have taken it off of the list of
That would be
possibilities.
a complication. I just think there's the additional cost of giving another piece of land in town to that authority. So it's not land that we own.
I'm sorry, can you speak up?
I'm sorry, it's just not land that we own. So it's my understanding that the housing authority would be willing to swap for it. They haven't built on it for 25 years. But we'd have to find another, how big is that? 6 acres maybe? You know, we'd have to find another lot of land to give them for it.
On the issue of central location, I visited a brand new center that opened this past Sunday. I visited yesterday, spent an hour with the Council on Aging Director. It is nowhere near the center of town. I asked her what her previous numbers were in terms of their previous location. And they were doing about 40 to 50 visits a day. In a week and a half, they're doing 150 visits a day in this new center. It is not near the center of town. So, you know, they probably have somewhat better public transportation than we do, but I think our Gatra and our senior van, and I like the idea that maybe people would park in the harbor and take a 10 or 15 minute walk to the center. So I don't think the location is that much of a detriment in terms of accessibility. And I don't think it was mentioned yet, but we need to have a site that is going to be conducive to expansion. And we're talking about building a facility now for current needs. You know, our senior population is going to increase significantly in the next 5 and 10 years. And undoubtedly, the center will need to be expanded. So I think any site that we're looking at, and people are looking at, and we certainly, that was one of our considerations, was the possibility of expansion. So, you know, I think of the 2 sites maybe that seem to be rising to the top, Gates and Driftway, I think we possibly have some good opportunities for expansion of those sites. And the Driftway site, as someone mentioned, offers tremendous opportunity for outdoor activity. So very, very important to the senior population. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Why don't we talk about the library site? We'll talk about that site first. But we'll just go in the same order. How about that? All right, I'll ask. Who would like to go first? All right, Mr. Dan, he's going to go first.
Is it on there? All right. Gordon, just to address your point, when I was 3 years ago talking to Council on Aging, I always told Council on Aging it's owned by the Housing Authority, and that land has always been an issue. But before we did this report, the town administrator, and I know that because I spoke to her directly, was well aware that this was one of the sites we were looking at. Before it became a site for this report, we made sure that the Housing Authority was open to swapping it. Otherwise, we weren't going to spend the time, money, to go down that rabbit hole and find out that, guess what, it's not going to happen. So that's why I say to you, if your board was unaware of it, I'm sorry, but it's not a consideration that you should worry about because they have indicated to us in good faith that this is a site that they'd be willing to swap for the back acreage behind Central School. So I just want to make sure that's clear. Anyway, I'll get to the library. So the library has 3 different sites, or different types of options, if you will. One option was to place the senior center as you begin to go up to the library on the right-hand side. There's an old white colonial that's on the front of Branch Street. The location of that building would be sited right behind it. I'm against that. I'm not really looking for to have senior center structure abutting, shall we say, that house directly. The second site, I guess you could say, is if you were to drive up into the parking lot the library. It would be on the back side of the parking lot. Think facing basically some brush and woods presently. And then the third site would be actually, if you were to go along towards Central School, trying to bypass road, if you will, from Ranch Street to First Parish. Between the library, there's some land right there, and then there's also the Housing Authority and Central School. That would be the second or the third site for the location. Out of all three sites, the one that I thought looked the best was the second option, the one that's on the back side of the parking lot. And the reason why I like that location was, one, it's clustered within the three structures. You've got the town library, you've got a senior component, which is the Scituate Housing Authority, with the addition that's being built behind that. So you really have like a little community, a little common area that you can go from one building, walking over to the other, walking over to the other. I also liked it primarily because by putting it on the back side of the parking lot, there is all that land behind it, not just for future expansion, but for outdoor uses. You could have outdoor gardens, you could have walkways, you could have trails. Now this is the land that would be a part of the swap if we were to swap with the Driftway. And I like that concept because I thought to myself, you could incorporate different types of programming. And I think it was mentioned that you have like matrix or different types of walkways from that location, maybe over First Parish towards the old Gates Middle School, gymnasium, and so on and so forth. Obviously, with this site, it's more expensive than the Driftway. But I actually, and the other negative aspect of this is there's a parking component. I need to make sure that there's enough parking for the senior center as well as for the library. But I actually like this site the best of all three options. And this, I have to say, was probably my second. But this one goes with the Driftway as a site. And one question I would ask the Council on Aging is, if you were to take cost out of it, out of fear that, if you had a number that's the lowest one, because of the fear that maybe it might not pass, if you take that component out of it, how would your evaluation of the Driftway match with the other locations? To me, I thought this was the best one, and that's the one I liked the most. It is complicated, it is tight. Yes, there will be people functioning and using the library, there'll be a kid component. There are also fields kids are going to be using, but also those could be used for the senior component, elderly component, older component, whatever you want to put it. I just like it. That's all.
I'll just reply, or unless somebody else wants to. It wasn't the cost really that steered us necessarily from that, and there were pros, and there are really always pros when you can connect, and certainly that was a nice site for that, but I think we really felt that it was almost too much. There was so much activity, and the parking and the access and egress onto Branch Street was actually, I think, the biggest factor or the biggest negative in our not necessarily going with that as a primary recommendation. So there were pros, and it's a nice option. Co-programming with the library was mentioned, and how nice that would be, and we would do that anyway. We don't need to be next door. At the same time, one-stop shopping, and a lot of people going in and out and visiting both places certainly has its advantages, I think. Anybody else? Congestion, just congestion and parking.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lucille Sorrentino, second term on the board. A resident of Scituate since 1972. Love Scituate. We'll never all agree on one spot. I could see that on one site. However, from the very beginning, it's been the focus to have a standalone senior center. And when we all thought about the Driftway, Ken Street, we didn't know the deal about the housing authority. So we didn't have that information. And we did go with the cost. However, my feeling is we should pick a site that has the least obstacles. And it seems to me that the Gates property, which is what we own, plenty of room, that the Gates would probably, that wasn't my first choice, but after I heard all the issues about the other places, the Gates School might be it. What we need to concentrate is start the process. We're never going to agree. We're never going to find the best spot, but if Gates has the least obstacles, and who knows what we're going to do with that building, whatever you guys choose, we're all going to support you, because we want this darn thing built.
Thank you.
Well, let me start by saying, the five of us up here all support this 100%. Maybe different ideas of it, but that's why we're here. That's why we've had several meetings, that's why we've all gone to them, so we're pushing this through. We're going to make a decision tonight at something. I mean, we're at the apex of this whole process, so, and we thank you all for coming out here and giving your feedback. Clearly, there's not a clear answer. I was at 3 meetings. Every one of them I asked people in the meeting, and there's about 100 of you here, there are about 100 of all those, to pick which one they like the best. And every meeting, the majority was a different site. So there's not one that just is outrageously better. The only one that everyone can kind of agree on is the Purple Dinosaur. So, you know, we're gonna do the best we can and look at what we think is important and try and make a decision that way. We don't want to just, you know, we've come too far to just get it done, right? We've got to pick the site that is going to be the best site. And John had some good points at the last meeting that there's some strategy to it in terms of, you know, just because we pick a site doesn't mean it's going to get built, right? It still has to pass town meeting, it still has to pass an override at the ballots. So we've got to think of that some way. But we do want to pick a site that's going to be great. We don't want to build it and all of a sudden have someone say, I hate the traffic. You know, boy, the smells. You know, I wish it was near the library, that sort of stuff. So, quickly at the library, the things that I liked about it, I like a multifunctional spot where there's a lot going on and seniors have other things to do than just go to the senior center. I like that they can walk to the library. I like that they can walk to the ball fields and see their grandkids play soccer. I like the fact that there's outdoor space where they can go, you know, be involved in different activities. That's what's important to me, or higher on my list of what I'm looking at the sites. I like what Hingham did, that the fact that you can go in and there's functionality that you can do as opposed to just going to a senior center. That's what drew me to this site as being one that I like. And I think the only location I like was the one John pointed out too, the one that's on the field side of the property over here. But someone just brought up, it's congested back there. It's not as wide open and it's accessible as someone mentioned the Gates site. I think that would probably have more free ranging. It seems a little bit congested with the library activity there. Not overwhelmingly, but that would be the downside that I saw. That, you know, I think all sites are going to have plenty of parking. They're all going to have room for expansion. So those are my quick thoughts on that.
I too, out of the 3 sites in the library, I would choose this one. I don't have a problem if it was built on any 3, but I prefer the first one. It's set back, it's less of an impact to the existing homes than certainly the second one. And the third one places it fairly close to Central School, senior housing. Only thing that makes me nervous about is we have a set of plans on the town hall somewhere, and the site cost to do the one we spoke about a dozen years ago, 15 years ago. Just makes me nervous about that. I think our site costs were $600,000 back then, that not exactly where this one is, so that just makes me a little nervous about this site. I certainly would support if, you know, the majority of the group would like it built there, but I think what I'm hearing is we want to just go forward. So, Tony said, Tony and I, this was a topic of discussion when we ran for Selectmen last spring, the re-election. So we're committed to it. Timing, we've just done these 3 buildings, as obviously everyone knows. So when we do go forward, we want to make sure it's going to pass. Make sure, what was it here in the survey? A fairly large amount of people don't want to see anything. So what we do, we have to, you know, plan carefully for it and time it correctly.
So I touched briefly on the library sites, but I don't at all like option A, which is to put it in the parking lot. I get the synergy and all of that, but having served on the as a library trustee for however many years, that parking lot is so busy all the time, and there's lots of little kids running around, and I just would be very concerned from a safety perspective that it may conceptually make sense, but I think in practice it would be very dangerous. The other two sites, it comes back to option B to me is same problem, it's in the parking lot. So the option towards Central Park, I do like that. I like the original siting 100 years ago, the original plan, because there is a great synergistic feeling between the library and the senior center. But having new construction going behind Central and adding that additional housing there, plus using playing fields, I just think the site would be, it would be difficult coming in and out, regardless of when it was used. So I would take the library off the table in my consideration.
I actually was surprised at all the locations that they were able to fit the building on that library property. I share the same concern that the Council on Aging does, which is the congestion. I think when you really look at the plan, it looks like it fits, but you do a little Google Earth zoom in, I think it's very tight, and parking is a big concern for me because I think, you know, programming is predominantly done during the day hours, just like the library with all the kids there, so there isn't that alternate use of the parking lot, so I'm very concerned about that. I do love the fact that it's centrally located and it's a campus-like feel, and that's really what is important to me. And as Sean just said, you know, there's a new housing project going on there right now. It hasn't broken ground yet, but we're going to have 30 new affordable units there. And we don't really know what that's going to look like and the impact's going to be, you know, still through the planning phases. So for me, there are more cons than pros to the library. So I would take that off the table as well. I think, you know, right now, listening to the pros for the Driftway, and then as we go through the gates next, those are the two sites that rise to the top for me. Does anybody from the public have any comment at this juncture? Sure. Hi, Dale. Name and address for the record.
Dale Baylon. 70.
Thank you.
Loud and clear. 74 Wheeler Park Drive. And if you thought I wasn't going to make a comment, I just want to say that this is recently, as of September, I'm not on the board of the COA any longer. I was on for 6 years. I have been working very hard for all of you guys for a long time. I currently write a column for...
We thank you.
No, and I currently write a column for the Mariner. I volunteer, etc., etc. The reason I bring these things up is because I think probably almost 100% of you, I know you as individuals. I know most of you as individuals. I think it's time, as Lucille said, we have to move. We have to do something positive. We can't bat this ball around anymore. As I wrote in one of my columns last week, we have to get off this merry-go-round. We have to make some decisions. We're not all going to be happy. I may not be happy. I will be happy when my folks have a place that's decent to go to. I take a class every Wednesday at the Senior Center with Bob Jackman. He's a wonderful teacher, a retired teacher from Scituate High. I get sick in that. When I have to leave the class, if he runs late, I have to leave. I get a headache. I'm not a hypochondriac. I'm a kidney transplant patient. It has nothing to do with my breathing. The place is horrible. We've determined that. We need to move forward. This is what we want. We're not all going to be happy. I may not be happy. I just want something good for my folks. And now I'm one of you. I just had a birthday today. I'm a senior. I want to be happy too.
Happy birthday. So I think Dale raises a great point that I know I'm aware of, and I think the board is aware of too, is that, you know, there are a lot of different opinions out there in the community, whether or not we need a senior center. Some seniors don't use senior centers, some do. And I sort of look at it as, yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'll use a senior center, but I know that it's important to us as a community. So whatever we decide tonight, I agree with Dale. I hope that we can all come together, unified, to put forward a solution to really educate the rest of the citizens in this community the value and the need of this center, because it really is needed. So that's my big ask, is that whatever happens tonight, whatever site gets chosen, that we collectively all get behind it, because at the end of the day, we need a new center. Were you here first, Mrs. Reedy? I wasn't sure. Oh. Okay, thanks, Dale.
Audrey Reedy, 32 Strawberry Lane. I've been working on this for 20 years. My only question tonight, because I love the idea up by the library and the center entrance, and everybody's talking about the congestion. So it begs the question, you said there's a lot of land. Could there possibly be another entrance if you had the senior center? In the center, as you said, setback up north. If we have a lot of land, why couldn't we make another entrance?
Something that we can ask it to be looked at, absolutely.
Before we say we can't have it there because of congestion, let's not exit out if there's another possible solution.
Which one, are you talking about the library?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and it's supposedly a lot of land? So
there's wetlands back there as well, so we have to look at crossing the wetlands.
Okay, but still, I just don't like the idea of tossing it aside because of congestion when there might be a council.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Hi, Sandy Duffy, 8 Oak Road, and this is my own opinion. I want everybody to know just my opinion. I'm asked not to speak for anybody else. But I really think it should be Branch Street. It's the center of town. There's 3 living places now that could easily, people could walk there. They're 55 and older, all of them. Like the Sunlight House, you know, Central School, all those areas. And I live in that neighborhood too. And a lot of people in that neighborhood are 55 and older, which are seniors 55 and older. Yes. Sean too. Oh, I thought you were 50 something. But anyway, yeah, I think it's the most central part, and one of the things that I talked with Gordon about is, he said the driveway was $1 million. I mean, really, I think we can build a driveway to a senior center less than $1 million, so I think we need to have, no matter where you decide to build the senior center, that there should be a committee that can look into it, because all these prices to me seem pretty high. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so any other comments about the library? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Old House, 136 First Parish Road. I have a concern that basically if the senior center goes there, that it's going to become a kind of seniors ghetto. I also think that the advantage of being located close to the senior housing is sort of a red herring. Most of the seniors in town don't live in senior housing. They live all over town. They're randomly located. Most seniors have licenses. Most seniors drive. So where the location is irrelevant. And it isn't the center of town anyways. I mean, Well, I mean, it would be the library and then everything surrounded by senior things. And it's great for the people who live in senior housing, but it isn't great for everybody who lives all over town. And relatively few people live in the senior housing, whether you count what's there now or what's going to be there in the future. Like I say, people are randomly distributed around town. I personally prefer the Driftway. I'm located halfway between the Driftway and the library and gates and everything else. And I personally, so I don't have a distance issue for anything. I just think the Driftway site is nice because it's in a wooded area, there's room for expansion there, there's room for plenty of parking. Parking's an issue at the library. Sometimes it's crowded now. I can only imagine how crowded it would be if the seniors are located there. And the library is open to everyone and should be open to everyone. But what if it turns into a place that's full of seniors because it's nice and accessible? So that's my thoughts on
Well, to your point,
all the issues.
just to your point on when I was saying it's next to central housing, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're not trying to locate a structure or building just because it's next to senior housing. And so if that's, anybody believe that, I did not mean that at all, because, you know, that's not the point. The majority of people are going to probably be driving and getting the ride. I absolutely agree with you. And I disagree with your characterization of ghetto, but I understand the concept of maybe putting too many things together and feeling like maybe it's just senior. I understand your point. I may disagree with that a little bit, because I think there are obviously kids, young adults, families who use the library, but also they use the fields also. But to Mrs. Reedy's point, you know, you mentioned about access and other access. I'm looking for you. There we are. With respect to the site, that's a valid point. There is a right-of-way that comes off First Parish that accesses it from, I believe it's the Trinitarian Church, that location somewhere on there. But it's not, I do not believe it's an actual town-owned street. So that's, from the old site, that's what I was looking at from way back when, that was a proposed access point to that back acreage. So that's something we can take a look at further. But I understand exactly what you're saying. Is there another route that can gain access to it? Good points. Thank you.
A couple of things I just, acknowledge you 1 second. I'm just going through some of the detail that's in the report that sort of shifted my view a little bit. With the Kent Street, and this is in the report that was available to everybody months ago, so this should have been readily available. Kent Street also is in a floodplain district. 8th and Branch Street are not, as well as Kent Street is a water resource protection area as well. So I just want to raise that issue as well. Mrs. Ball, name and address?
Julia Ball, 44 Rebecca Road. I am very much brought up in the library in that area because of the fact that to me, it's a place where they can get out. The seniors walk around. There's the tower. There's also plenty of ball games going on in the fields. And you know, everybody keeps talking about they want the seniors to join in with the young people, and that's where you're going to get it. You put it out in the Driftway, and you're not going to get that combination of groups. I've heard, oh, well, there's a dog park going out there. There are not a lot of seniors that go out and walk the dog, would want to walk a dog out on the dog park. Yeah, it's fairly close to walking to the senior center, but being a walker, I myself would probably out to town. I wouldn't be able to do that because it's more than a mile, and I was a good walker. I'm concerned about the idea that the seniors have the ability to get to different places, and yes, it is the center of town. Historically, it is the center of town. It's just ideal. I know that it would be a little bit crowded, but again, you've got everything right there. And it's Langdon, if I'm not correct, Langdon Drive. It is a private way, but it is a road. And then the Trinitarian Congregational Church parking lot backs right up into that land too. So that's something that I feel it's a good spot. I personally would not be able to go out on the driftway if you have the mulch, because I can't tolerate the smell of it. And you also have the pumping station, your treatment station, sewer treatment, and there are times when sulfur smell comes off of that. And I'm not trying to downplay anybody living out there. I just noticed those are two things. I would never be able to use the outside of those windows were there. Thank you.
Thank you.
John, that's a 50-unit question. You mentioned twice so far about the driftway being a flood zone. But remember specifically the architect said that the site itself was not. It was above. It was not.
You're correct. There's a garden area that's on Kent Street. It's Old Kent Street, really. That's the location of the flood zone is. It wouldn't impact the actual site itself. There wouldn't be any construction.
Elaine Gordon, Hazel Ave, 11 Hazel Ave. I personally like the idea of the driftway. I like a standalone. At this point in time, I'm like a senior vagabond. On Mondays, I go to Marshfield. It's a standalone. It's long. It's got a giant parking lot, and it is always completely full. On Fridays, I go down to Cohasset. Beautiful building, standalone, but it doesn't need to be in amongst all of these other buildings to be significant. I have a bit of a problem with the idea of being adjacent to all these fields. I looked today, 100 of us came to this hearing. I had a hard time parking because there was a ball game going on from the high school. There's supposed to be a ball game going on from the high school. We're here at the high school. That's what you expect. There's going to be congestion. If there's activity on the fields and the seniors are there, there's going to be congestion in parking. It's not going to be an easy fix. I have a problem with the Gates site because of the traffic. I worked at Gates for a time. Going in and out of that area is a nightmare. We all know when you come from the common, entering into the traffic flow is very, very difficult. I think the library site would have some similar kinds of problems, not as bad. The driftway site stands alone, it stands tall, it has room for expansion, and there's a sense of identity to it. I like that site. I know it's not perfect. I'm troubled by the fact that we hear there's a land swap issue, there's floodplain issue, that there's all of that is so terribly wrong with it. As Gordon said, why is it even on the table?
It's not terribly wrong. They're just obstacles in timing things. So there's just extra steps that would have to take place.
Every site that we've looked at, that the town owns, with the exception of the driftway, has some kind of ward, if you will, barnacle, using the nautical term. So that's what we're looking at. We're putting it out there. Is it going to prevent it from happening? No. But every site we're looking at has some issue, and that's why, to be candid, everybody here wants to push this ball across the final yard line. I agree. We're vetting it out tonight. We're just explaining what our thoughts on each of the sites are. And then I think at the end we're going to vote. And that's fine. But I want to explain to everybody what I'm looking at as the official to tell you why I see each site pros and I see some cons.
Then you had better, whatever site you decide on, you better have a very, very clear vision. And before you go to town meeting, have an answer for every one of these issues that I'm raising it here and I support it. Town meeting, they're not all going to support it.
You're absolutely right. I think everybody here, for the most part, would say they're going to vote for a senior center. If we could vote one of the four, one of the three, everybody would vote. But when this goes to town meeting, I suspect most of the people are going to vote for it. Because the issue is going to be at your override and you have to go to ballot box. And you're absolutely right. That's why we're talking about the pros and cons. Because when you put this to the voters, past projects that we put before the voters, we've had to vet it, each and every issue. The costs, the negatives, the pros, the cons, because the people who don't want it, there are not that many who don't want it. I mean, the people who can't afford it, they're gonna vote it down. I respect that, because they can't afford it. But the ones who truly are out there just to kind of torpedo it, there are a few. They're gonna look at every little blemish, and they're gonna highlight that blemish for why it should go forward.
And they're gonna
On each
advertise
side, you got it.
It's gonna go wild on Facebook.
I can tell you right now, this board is going to be prepared, along with the Council on Aging, to be able to at least articulate the rationale as to why that blemish, whether it's parking, that blemish because of the smell, that blemish because it happens to be the traffic route, that blemish because it happens to be the cost. We'll certainly put our best foot forward and articulate why this town needs to have it for its future, not just now, but for its future.
Well, the good news is that you didn't build it 30 years ago, because now we have to renovate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
One quick comment on the parking. Just know that any place that we put it, that parking spots are going to be put there for this facility itself. So we're not going to be parking in the library parking lot spaces. We're not going to be parking in the central field spaces. There are over 100 spots, no matter what spot we go to, in addition to whatever's there now. That doesn't mean, wherever you are, that someone whose kid is playing on central field isn't going to park in that spot if it's right next to it. But just know that it's not relying on other spaces that are already there.
Catherine Seaton, 26 Dr. Silk. You just basically answered my question. Thank you. But I was going to ask you, will there be less parking spaces at the library site, so they all kind of equal?
I believe everything had
When
the
you build-
same criteria.
When you build any use for structure for a building, you have to make sure that when you build it, you have adequate parking for that use. Just because they might be side by side doesn't mean they're going to be utilizing the same parking spaces, and that's what Tony's saying. So if people get that idea, no, we're not articulating why for you. They have to have adequate parking for the Council on Aging, separate and apart from any other use around, whether it's ball fields, whether it's for the library, whether it's for gates. Those are the sites.
And are these parking spaces going to be wide enough for seniors to get in and out? I can't stand it when I go to this little itsy bitsy parking space, and I come up to my door this much, and I have to get out of my car, and I don't need a handicap space, but I do Meals on Wheels in Hull, and their senior parking housing is ridiculous.
I have to say, when I go to church, I try to park in my church parking lot, and the difference is that the regulations for parking based on the state and the building codes set certain parameters. They haven't factored in that a lot of people have bought SUVs, large trucks, and so therefore when you pull into a normal spot that used to fit big long cars, they're a lot wider now than they used to be back in the 70s. And I would agree, I think that's a consideration that we need to take a look at, because trying to get out within the space, it's confined. And, I think that's a very valid point that you raised, that we should be looking at as a consideration for parking.
The number of spots, just so you have it clear, on the library, there's 98 spots. On the, there were 100 on Country Way, there's 120 to 160 at Gates, and on Kent Street, there's 115 to 135, or there's 80, there's 80 in here, but there's at least 100 spots on every site, no matter which one it is.
Point of clarification, if you look at page 61, 62, and 63, you'll notice that all those spaces are shared with the library. Unless I'm incorrect.
Gordon, the thing is, I think the way they rendered this is that they are using a parking slot, not saying we have two separate parking lots. The use for the library has X, and I don't have that number. The use for the senior center is Y. In this rendering, they're putting them together, so it's one large parking lot as opposed to separate parking. And I can tell you right now, you can't, this site, if it's going to be utilizing the same parking, is not going to happen. It can't. So they have to be, it's a larger parking lot that encompasses not just the use for the library, it encompasses the use for the senior.
But if you consider the recommended number of parking spots for a 15,000 square foot center is about 100 parking spots, in the library, I don't know, in the library, I don't think there were 170 or 80 parking spots on any of these plans.
All I can tell you right now is, I don't know the number for the library right now. I can find that out by tomorrow. The second thing is, this is a rendering. So the bottom line is, it's going to have adequate parking for the use of the senior center, area center, whatever we're calling it. And there will be the additional parking that's present for the library. We're not going to be utilizing that parking for the senior center.
Marilyn O'Brien, 12 Meeting House Lane. I would love to see this built at the library. I think there will be plenty of parking. When I go to the library now, there's lots of parking places. They're better empty. I'm not there every day or anything, but right now, there's lots of parking from the library. They need a standalone, and I don't want anything done at gates. So I'm all in favor.
Thank you.
Hi, Paul Barrett, 14 Michael Ave. I know we've moved on a little bit from talking about the Kent Street, but you mentioned that there's no works on the Kent Street side, so just not trying to disabuse you of that notion. The Kent Street side is located 45 mile an hour zone. It's very, very difficult to traverse and turn. There's Old Driftway, which is very tough to get into because people going by 45 miles an hour and often backs up. I don't know how, if there's an egress or ingress from Kent Street into that site, that you're going to have people not hold traffic up because it's, again, 45 miles an hour and already very difficult to use. I'd also want to raise the point that the density of use in that area is incredible and getting worse. We already have the green, we already have the treatment plant, we already have the wind turbine, which I can't believe anyone's going to be very happy about having the site located next to the wind turbine. But as we move down the road, we've got the dump, and next we're going to have more housing located at the train station that's not being taken into effect. This is all going to affect the traffic that's on Driftway. People may not live near Driftway because they don't know about the traffic on Driftway, but it's there. There's a lot of heavy traffic on Driftway at all hours of the day. It's very difficult to get out on the street. So, just going to make you aware of that.
Thank you. All right, we'll move the conversation just to the gates, the last location. The pros and cons. I won't shout spot again, John. If somebody else wants to go first.
I'll go.
All right, we'll just be orderly.
All right, so as people probably know, there are 3 potential options at the gates. One option is next to the Little Red Schoolhouse, the old high school, or I should say the middle school, elementary, it's now the Historical Society. I'm not interested in that location at all. The other option is to place it next to, when you first come into the old, shall we say, I'll call it, it's the old town hall. It's really what it is. This location is where the old town hall was located. It's where the C wing is, it's a slab wing, it's a portion, as soon as you come into the Gates Middle School, will be on the right-hand side. That would be the second location. I believe the third location would be set back behind Gates Middle School. It's, again, there's a slab, it's the C wing, it would be directly behind it, and that's another location. Just by way of clarification, when I first sat down with Tony and Sean and other board members, we originally envisioned that Senior Center would go into the school itself. We looked at it, we thought it would be a cost effective, we thought, chasing on that way you can town hall, resolve a lot of issues. And I have to say at the time, I actually believe that was a great location within Gates. The one thing I see at Gates, and I hate calling it that because we have Gates over here, but for purposes of tonight, I'm calling it Gates. I like the fact that there's a gymnasium. I like the fact that there's a track there. I like the fact that you could utilize more programming in some capacity. I actually envision that maybe the old auditorium, the town hall used to be, town meetings used to be held, and bring it back with the stage and kind of utilize that some capacity. But I don't believe now that it really should be put inside Gates. I just don't think so. I do think, though, probably likes it, I like the idea that when we come into Gates itself, that if we were on the right-hand side, that you could maybe cross over and utilize the gym and some of those features, that we could construct a standalone structure that's within that loop, if you will. I think it would have a really nice presence, it would look nice, and you could utilize parking. I know that it tends to be a negative with respect to trying to leave gates, but we'd have to rework the traffic pattern through there, and I think it could work. So if gates were the option, I would look at gates with respect to having the council on aging located as soon as you come in through the gateway of Stone Hall, putting it where the old town hall was originally until it was torn down in the late 50s. To me, I thought that would be the best location for it. That way you can use the gym, you could use the exercise area underneath the gym. Maybe in the future, if the town had the wherewithal and the ability to go to the pool, you could utilize that in some capacity. You have the track in the back, you have the field in the back, you could use it, you could walk over to, again, some kind of pathways that you can walk over to the library, and that's what I think.
John mentioned our plans years ago. I mean, people have said over the last several years that there isn't a master plan. There was a master plan. The master plan was to put the senior center at Gates. It was to put town hall at Gates as well. And that just wasn't appealing to everybody that wanted to do it. I was and still am a proponent of that. I think that that is what I like the best. I think, again, because the same positive things about the library, I think, are still at Gates. As John mentioned, you have the field, you have cross-functionality, you have the ability to walk over to Central Field, walk to the library, you know, all the historical situations that are right there. I hate to see that school get knocked down and put some sort of development there, because it is, if not the center of Scituate, very close to the center of Scituate, and a very significant part of our history, and I want to keep it. I'm not opposed to having a freestanding building at Gates, because I think Gates will probably fill up with other functionality now, and those things will be used by everyone in town. Like John said, the gym is a huge asset for the town. There's got to be some pickleball players in here, right? So there's places where you can go during all seasons to use that are town functionality, and that's what I like about it. I like the fact that it's in the center of town, that other functions can go there, and that people will be able to interact with multi-generational events and functions. So that's why I like those two areas the best. You know, I think we do have to look at the survey and some of the dominant points that were there. You know, we got almost 600 people to respond. That's more people that have been to a town meeting since the train was coming to town. And some of the main points were cost, which Gates was the least expensive. If we had moved forward with it years ago, was about $21 million to do that and town hall there. Using existing buildings and having some multi-generational functionality. And I think all of those things can happen at the Gates property. And I like it in the existing Gates building, but my fear is that it's going to be a construction nightmare. Right? That's, you open it up and all of a sudden you've got an old house that we thought was going to be easy to fix and was not easy to fix. So that's my fear of using that building. I think there's plenty of space, which are 70,000 square feet, I think, in that building. Obviously we get rid of the ceiling. So there's plenty of space for them. But of the other two sites, I think I like the one that John, I actually like both of the other ones, but I like the one that John was leaning towards if it's a standalone site of Gates. But that is my number one location. Gates. I'm not telling you my vote yet.
I don't think they'll fit, all right? We have a track, you know, we have a little ball field there down. We have a small track. I don't think, to Dr. Price's point, I don't think you'd be able to add on. Option B puts it outside of the C-wing now, very close to First Parish Road. Option A puts it right behind the little red schools. And then you have to relocate the track and you lose the little league field. If that's all we're talking about right now, then I'll wait if we're going to talk about refurbishing gates, because I don't know if we used to say about that. But I like the idea, the location, but I don't think it will fit a standalone building, either one of these. I don't think it will fit in that site. Previous, the original one, we haven't replaced the ball field that we took out. Look for this, the junior. We're going to take another one. I realize it's, Little League, and there's the track, but it's difficult to find real space. I'll call it, finish the junior.
So just talking about the standalone options, I do like the locating the senior center in the center of town, just for all the reasons we've discussed. I think any of the locations, we have to go back to the drawing board on access and traffic patterns. But I think those are the sorts of things, if you choose that site, that's where you drill down in the details and figure it out, because having all those access points to that site, I think, is a problem the way it's designed now, but I think it's a surmountable problem. I really do like the potential use of the existing recreation facilities on that site for everybody, for seniors, for the community in general. I think that's a big plus to that site. I also think that there's a potential cost offset if we relocate fields or if we expand walking trails to connect that site over to Central Field, more readily. Those are the sorts of things that are appropriate to bring before CPC for funding, which would reduce the cost of development of that site. I think that brings it more in, who knows how that'll play out, but I think it's potential to bring it in line with the cost of Kent Street. So, and I have some comments about the reuse gates too, but I'll leave it to that. As for the three options, it's hard. I think we have to look really close at what is expandable and not without having to risk losing the fields that we can't possibly lose any more fields. So, that's
it. I'd like to see a standalone on here. I think we will find that it's going to be cost prohibitive to renovate gates, being the old building that it is, so I'd like to see a standalone on this piece of property. I think some of the challenges that have been raised with the three different sites that we have here, I have confidence that the architect can preserve the field as well as put the senior center here. I think every rendition that we have is taking into account, if I'm not mistaken, some sort of expandability when I was looking at the drawings. Did you think the same? Right.
School option A is the one with it set back behind the Little Red Schoolhouse, and that offered more expandability and room for outdoor anything,
Which is
activities,
important to you,
programming, which
right?
is important to us. The other site at the Sea Wing did not, and really almost barely doesn't fit at all. I don't think there's room for a patio in the back. So that was a consideration. So really, on each of those sites, we narrowed it down to one on each of them, and it was option A that we looked at. I mean, we looked at both, but.
Well, that's good to know, though. Thank you for sharing that, because we took a look at that. So for me, looking at the gate site, again, it goes back to a campus environment and being central. I know folks have some concerns about the traffic there, but again, I think that's something that we can address if we make sure folks go on Cudworth. I personally, we have to do something with that land. Half the building is empty today. We've got recreation in there now. And part of the building, I think, as John had said, it makes a very nice multi-generational campus, which we heard from many of our applicants to the Senior Council on Aging this summer, that multi-generational is very important for seniors to have vitality and stay lively, and it just, we heard it over and over again. So for me to have access and to the fields, so you can have those courts, those pickle courts, or bocce courts. I think there's a lot of potential, and I think it also helps us as a town and a board resolve the question of what to do with that property. And I look at it as a phased approach. As phase one, would be a standalone senior center, but work through the planning of what would happen with, phase two and exactly what we would put in the balance of the building that would remain. I think we all probably agree that C wings would come down. I don't know what would happen with that back wing, and again, I would look to the experts to give us that advice. So that's where I am with regards to the gate site. Definitely a standalone. I'm not really, I don't have a strong position on where the property. I want to make it work. I want to make it work so it does have some expandability. I also want to make it work so we can reconfigure a field. I do not want to take a field offline. I think if we do our due diligence to make sure we don't take a field offline, we will get even more support at the polls. So keep that in mind as well, because we are a community and we need to make sure that we're sensitive to all of that. So that's where I am on that. Yes?
Lucille again. I just want to make one notice. Did you notice that tonight there's been comments and restrictions on two properties? We talked about congestion at the library, and then we talked about the land on the Driftway. There has been no problems. No one has brought up any problems on the Gates property. Did I hear it, or maybe I missed it?
Well, I did raise accessibility, the traffic and going to
okay.
That's really what I have for me for cons, and also that it does take a little bit more greater planning, because I think we need to do our due diligence and make sure that as we plan the standalone for the senior center, we need to have our ducks in a row and have consensus as to what we're going to do with the remainder of the building, the property as well.
Yeah, that's
so
it.
That's a con.
That's it. But it seems to me, we have to start worrying about that land on the Driftway, trying to switch it from the housing authority, correct? The traffic flow. So I feel like John McCain. I've changed my mind, but that basically, like we're all for the Driftway, but it seems the Gates School has lots of potential. That's all I want to say.
And I think Tony raised it earlier. Every site has an issue. Every site has an issue.
Hi, Janice does 178 Armstrong. A couple of things. I hope you consider our recommendation, which we did. Spend a lot of time. Oh, I'm sorry. I hope you consider our decision to put forth Driftway. We spent a lot of time on that. Pier 44, I'm wondering, could you respond to that? It was many times throughout the survey to dispute why we can't use it.
Yep, so Pier 44, obviously we bought the property, it has some restriction on it. I think we all feel that it could have been, we probably could turn it into a senior center if we wanted to, and we even discussed the item, but it's not big enough for your needs. That's what you've come back with all
Aren't there
along.
restrictions on that in
There
terms
are.
of when
There
it's
are.
purchased? Yes.
There are, but I think it could be a community, functionality to it too, as well as seniors that could get around it. Or we could even go to them and see if they would change it. We're going to pursue that at one point in time. But the word that we got back from the Council on Aging at that point in time was that it wouldn't fill their needs. It's not a big enough building.
We don't have to get around anything. I met the MBTA down there when we first approached them about getting funds to buy that building. There were two components that we had to do to apply to get funding for that building. One was educational, and the other one was public. So I think a senior center could go there without having to do anything, change anything, ask permission. I'm not saying I'm in favor of it, but just to answer your question, we wouldn't have to jump through any hoops, and they would be on board. I remember standing in the parking lot talking to the gentleman, those two things.
But I think we've always heard from the Council on Aging and Linda that the space is inadequate. That's right. And parking is inadequate. And I think there's a misnomer too that we own the strip of land right in front on the harbor, and we don't. So that's why it really has never made it to the top of the list. Okay.
just want more people to understand that there's a lot of restrictions around it. And then,
One other quick thing about that is we can't rebuild it because it's in a floodplain and there's all sorts of codes that you would have to take into account if you were to rebuild on that spot. And it would be cost prohibitive to do that.
The cost is going to be an issue. The second thing is the parking lot that actually goes from Jericho to the actual water side. There's a view easement across the street, which means that you can't build on that side of the lot. All you can build on is where the building presently stands, which is not necessarily a major issue. It's just that means that you have to build within the, shall we say, the building envelope of the building itself. Is it possible? Yes, parking would be an issue because it wouldn't have the adequate parking that you need. Those are those wards, if you will, on that side. But I would say that I think if and when we're able to pass a new site or a building, it certainly would be a consideration to see temporarily, maybe to see a little more overhead as the new building's getting built. As a thought. I will say though, any programming that can be used in there should continue independent of the new council on aging, because it's a great site.
thank you.
Yes.
Joanne Ball. First thing, just remember that in 1991, Pier 44 was flooded right up to the windowsill. That's something you have to take into consideration. It is in the high velocity floodplain. I remember John talking about raising it, which at one point was talk of changing it into some, I can't remember what we were going to do with it, but the thought of raising it up, which means that it would have to go up on piers, and seniors would have a difficult time getting into it. And I would like to bring this up, that I'm totally against changing the seniors in Gates School, the old building. I have been with Laura to a school that was done, and all they did was paint the walls and put new carpet in. The kitchen was a kitchen that was done by the Boy Scouts from somebody's old kitchen. You can't move the walls, which John and I have talked about because they're pretty solid. And you're talking about people going into the gym. Yes, pickleball people can go up into the gym, but it's a long way for people who have breathing problems, wheelchairs, or walkers to get up into that gym and use it. It would have to have an elevator for them to get up in it. And that's something to be concerned about.
You're absolutely right. So nobody's saying Gates, we're not saying put the council on aging or senior center in the four walls, if you will, of Gates Old School. That's not a consideration. So if anybody thinks that, please listen. I guess that's a later discussion, but for right now, it's not part of my consideration. As far as the use with the gym and other facets on this was the tennis court, that is going to be handicap accessible. And at some point, the town's going to have to put an elevator in there, and I'm all for it. So as far as that is going to be, it is accessible, but you got to go a long way around. What I'm talking about in the future, that's going to have to be, but that's a discussion for the times.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that somebody thinks it is a place to put it. As I say, seeing what was done in other communities, I did visit 12 different communities. Partly it started with John recommending I go down to Orleans. And I have seen 12 different senior centers. The majority of them are built in wood, which makes me wonder about the cost of building a senior center. What would it be constructed of that was the cost that was given to you by the gentleman that came in and evaluated the different land. And I'm, from having a builder in my family, he said that the cost of building it like house construction, which you can do because all the senior centers around are built of wood. And that does reduce the cost of building a senior center. But to say, oh, that Gates would be ideal, yeah, it has a lot of space, but you can't move the walls. And seeing what they did in Weymouth, it's really very limited. They could not have one big room or one room that could be divided with sliding partitions and open it up because they couldn't take the walls down. they had to deal with what they had there. And I don't think that would work, having gone into these 12 different places.
Thank you. Dr. Price?
Just to comment on multi-generational, and we've had lots of discussions about this between the staff and our board. We've come to a conclusion that a building is not multi-generational, it's the programs that are offered. And I know that Linda, is certainly thinking along those lines, as are we. So it's our, firm intent to make sure that we can develop multi-generational programs so that everyone can benefit by contact with the seniors. You want me to start over?
You might need to get a little closer to the mic.
So multi-generational is something that's going to happen. It's not the building that's multi-generational, it's the programs that will be offered. So, anyone who has concerns about that, I think we can put that to bed. Can I bring up something about cost? The big elephant in the room is what is this going to cost me and John and Laura and everybody else in this room? And figures that I received from Steve, whose last name escapes me, from the clerk's office, it would be approximately, if we're looking at an 8 or 9, $10 million center, it would be less than $100 on the average tax bill per year. That basically comes down to a cup of coffee a week, not at Starbucks, but at Dunkin' Donuts and Harvard. I don't want to see anyone spend another dollar more on the tax bill. But I think most people, if they look at the benefits of the senior center, I don't think $85 or $90 additional in the tax bill is going to make them have to move out of Scituate. So I think we need to educate, our residents about that. This is not going to be, a huge burden to them financially.
No, absolutely. And that would be a part of the whole educational aspect and campaign that would take place once we. So the next step after this. So I know folks want to talk about just to kind of lay out next steps for folks, since you're talking about the financial support. I think the board wants to talk a little bit about the reuse of gates. I'm getting that sense, so let's spend 5 evenings, whatever we need to on that. And then I think we need to move and make a decision because it's getting late. But after we decide on a site this evening, the next step is to identify funding for a design for that site, and to look at the options, the most cost-effective options, to your point, and then that would have to go to town meeting and pass town meeting vote for the design, and then we would also have to take that, once it passes town meeting, to the ballot box for a debt exclusion override. There's simply no way around it. We will be as resourceful as we can. We have a terrific finance team that always helps us identify sources of revenue to offset the impact of additional debt. We can take a look at the timing to see if any debt is falling off. That hopefully might mitigate some of the pain of an additional tax burden for all of us, I might add, for all of us. So that would definitely be a part of the educational campaign, Dr. Price. And your figures are correct. It's between $10 and $12 for every $1 million borrowed on the median price of a house, though, in Scituate.
Just want to comment along those lines. FOSS, Friends of Scituate Seniors, certainly is a very dedicated group. We want to try to reduce the burden to the taxpayers as much as possible. They're doing a great job. Are they going to make a commitment like the library people did? No, I don't think that would be wise. But I know that our board and FOSS and even individuals are going to look at every possible venue, grants, donations, whatever, to try to reduce the burden to the taxpayers. So we don't want to make it any more of a burden than what it needs to be. So we try to keep those costs down as much as possible. So we're dedicated to help do that.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Tom McCusker, 50 Guinea Pasture. I don't like the gate site at all. I talked to John something before. I think if you put it there, you're limiting what you can do to that property in the future. My hope for the future is that it's sold. Can't keep on keeping on buildings. And I'm at the end of my reach for taxes in the town and stuff. I would hope when they do the financing, like you said, of $10 million or less on one, You could take like the community preservation money, either suspend it or reduce it to make it cost neutral, you know, for the time that you're paying it back. But it doesn't matter to me if they build a senior center that costs, you know, $15, $20 million, and I can't afford to stay there anymore, so I can't use it anyway. And this cost has got to be a very, very big primary thing in a location and everything else.
We agree. Thank you. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Jim Fairbanks, Millgate Street. I would just like to make a comment. I was at the senior center on Tuesday for 2 hours. 2 people came in. They couldn't find what the senior health fair was. It was at St. Mary's, in case you didn't know. And another younger woman brought her mother in. She had spent an hour driving around trying to find the senior center for her Medicare appointment. And then I had 2 phone calls where people said, well, where is this exercise being held, or where is this being held? Because the senior center is all over town. No one knows where they are. And I do feel like we're the orphans of the town. Something has to be done now.
All right, so folks on the board want to just talk, I don't know, Tony, I know you had brought up the reuse of the existing gates, and I heard some chatter down here, and folks on this side wanted to talk about it as well, so. Go ahead, sir. We were just going to go ahead.
Thank you. Edward Hannafin, 3 Middle Wharf Plaza. A couple of comments, and I really appreciate everything that the Board of Selectmen, Council on Aging is doing, and particularly want to applaud Linda Hayes for all the great work that she has done for all of us. As far as the sites, I think it's pretty clear there's some pros and cons on each one of them. And my preference is for the Driftway site. And I know that there's been some comments about traffic concerns. And I'd like to just kind of a point of reference mention Duxbury Senior Center, which, as some of you who've been there know, it is right on 3A, and it's heavy traffic, and that doesn't seem to deter anyone from attending it. They get a big draw there. So I wouldn't put too much weight on the traffic side of things. It's an issue, but apparently not a real big one. So our preference is for the Driftway site. Our second preference would be for the library site. And tonight we're hearing that at the Gate School, a freestanding building is an option. And it would seem to me that that might be a very workable way to go. But I can tell you that us and many of the people we talk to are totally against going into the Gate School itself, just because, you know, for all of us who watch the Fixer-Upper program, you never know what you're going to find until you start tearing down the walls. So a freestanding, I think, could be a very good option there. But thank you again for all your hard work on it.
Thank you.
Marilyn O'Brien, 12 Meeting House Lane. My concern is if you pick the Gate School, you're going to get bogged down with that. You're going to, instead of just building the senior center, you'll have to figure out the roads, the parking, and the senior center. And I can just see it, people saying, well, before you do that, you've got to figure out what you're going to do with the rest of the site. And that's going to take another 2 years. So I'm very anti-gates, but I'm really worried that you're going to get bogged down in that whole site.
So did any of my fellow board members want to address the reuse of gates? I personally am fully in favor of a standalone gate site.
No, I think it's the best option, but that's my opinion. It might not be real popular here tonight. Buildings. It's really not this group's, you know, someone might say, well, that's not our problem, but we have an asset there now, whether we have a liability. You know, the you folks might say, well, that's not our problem, we're here to talk about the senior center. I just like everything about it. I've sat next to Karen in the library renovation, and the building was built in the 70s when I saw all those change orders. And I would caution the board, other board members, if we do junior high, do something with that, anything. We're in for quite an awakening. But still, I like the building. I just, in my heart, I just think that's where it should go. And we could, Morris said something earlier tonight, phasing. Maybe that's something we could do. Still committed to doing it, but doing a phased approach. But do it correctly. If we put a freestanding building on anywhere on that, we're going to lose the fields, with the ball field. I just think that's the best location. No. In the building, within the building. Yep, within the building.
And Sean, we've been talking about this for years. I personally think that that's the best solution as well, but my fear is, as I said earlier, that it's not going to be easily to build out. I mean, it's easy to say we're going to, we're not going to just put a coat of paint on it, and you can knock down some walls, and you're not going to put your old kitchen equipment in there. If we do it, there's going to be $10 million put into that building that's going to, turn it into a very nice facility, landscape the way it should, so that people have proper access to it, proper way out of it. Again, I like the location of it, I like the history of the building, and I'd hate to see it knocked down or not used. And that's what's going to happen to it at some point in time if we don't come up with a plan to do something with it. But just to add, I'm not opposed to another building on that site either, if it turns out that it is going to be a nightmare to refurbish it. But I do like the fact, I do like what Hingham did. I do like the fact that there's town offices and other services there, and other functionality of the building other than just a senior center. Although we will have standalone operations as well.
Hi, Sandy Duffy again. Can we let the board finish, just with their comments, and then we'll get to the public for this? Sorry. It's okay.
Having gone through the library renovation, having done a lot of construction, I think refurbishing gates, as desirable as it is to use a facility we already have, that at the end of the day, it will end up costing just as much as a new building, and it will be a much inferior product, and we'll regret it.
I already said my opinion, but I'll say it again. I definitely am only an advocate for the senior center to be a standalone if the Gates property is the site that would move forward. I recognize that Gates needs to be renovated, but I think we can be creative and preserve the historical facade and have recreation, put some other town services in there, but I think there's enough room to do both.
So, and I'll be very brief, so. I actually agreed with Sean and Tony, as I told you from the get-go. That was my big push. I thought it was going to save the taxpayers. I thought it would be great to have the town, shall we say, municipality, going back to what had been planned back in 1981, 1980. Constantine, I'm looking at you because that was part of the plan that you, as a planning board member, had suggested. The bottom line was, it wasn't until the library situation, when we were renovating the library, we found out that there were problems behind the walls. And as a person who owns an old antique in Greenbush, I know when I was renovating that, you don't know once until you start going back and realize the issue. So asbestos was an issue with the library. We didn't anticipate it. It was a building from the 70s. You no idea what's going to be behind the walls with Gates. I do think Gates is something that the town needs to preserve. To see the town offices there long term, but I don't see it for the purposes of senior center. So at this point, I'm going to go home.
All right, I'm just going to take we have two last comments, and I think the board really needs to move forward and make a vote, please.
Sandy Duffy, 8 Oak Road. To tell you the truth, at first I wanted Gates too until I talked to people about it and looked into it. And somebody I know that does schools over said $1 million just to take the asbestos out.
13 levels in the school, and I love the school myself. And over 10 years ago, when I was on the PTO there, we wanted to buy a commercial microwave for the school, and the electrician told me, no way, the electric in there is really bad. So even though I love the school, I don't think the school itself can be done over.
I wasn't going to mention this, but since it came up, we're going to. I think Tony and probably John and Sean, I think were instrumental in Durkee Brown, who's awarded the contract to do the gates reuse. And there's some other properties also, the police station and the fire building. I wrote this last night after reviewing the Durkee Brown report. I just want to mention, tell you what it says. The floor-to-ceiling height and column spacing of the existing building does not suit programming well. Catlin and Petrovic added that any perceived economy in reusing the existing structure and enclosure would be countered by more square footage needed to work the program into the existing building. The result would be less than ideal spatial arrangement for the same or potentially even more money to renovate. As such, the design team proposed a separate, independent building on site for the senior center. We paid about $60,000 for that building.
Okay. So, first of all, I want to thank everybody for all the great input and feedback that you have provided to us. Both the Council on Aging and also all the residents that are here tonight. It's been very helpful. I know my eyes have been opened up to a couple of different options to consider that I may not have considered when I walked in this evening. So, just thinking about how to go through here, I guess we should just see if we'll just take it site by site. Now, again, tonight is just choosing the site, so we're not going to say option A, B, or C. We're not going to go there right now. It's just a site decision. So I guess we'll start at the top, unless there's any other further comments that any board members, any additional commentary that anybody wants to make. I don't see any. Well, no, that's what I was going to say, is to just want a motion for a site. I think that's probably the best way to go forward. If there was a motion on the table to move Driftway.
I'll make a motion to put the site at the Gates Middle School
Right, there's a motion on the table to put.
as a standalone entity.
Do I have a second?
I just want folks to know that, like you, I want it to be built. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it's a standalone building at the Gate, the old junior high. I guess that would be my second choice. I'm hearing from this group tonight that probably I'm, in the minority about remodeling Gates. So for that reason, I will second Tony's motion.
Okay, I have a second on the floor by Mr. Harris. For further discussion? Discuss.
As I said at the beginning, I mean, Gates has been my preference because I like the center, but there are two factors here that I think we need to consider. One is the recommendation of the Council on Aging to spend a lot of time looking at what their population will benefit from, and I think that needs to be heavily in our decision. The other factor is, I think the consensus that I have leaned over all this time, I'm concerned, everybody wants to see Gates remain a vital center of our community. But if we don't put the senior center there, that also potentially opens up room for a couple more fields if we take the ceiling down. I know it's not part of this conversation, but it gives us an opportunity to look at it in a different way. But the senior center, it does constrict the site. So I know that this is sort of counter to where I started, that this has been a very good conversation, as you said, and I think those two factors that I talked about is if we don't put it there, then we do it outside as a factor.
Okay, so I'll just say I did like the driftway. I know that there's some criticisms about traffic and speed. Of course, right away from the transfer station, people drive to the transfer station. It's 50 miles an hour coming out in that area. So I don't see traffic as far as the speed issue. One gentleman came up here from my lab suggesting congestion. That can always be moved to the side. As far as the wind turbine, those are issues that are out there. There will be noise issues for some people who have sensitivity to it. Certainly that would be a structural issue that we have to take a look at with footwear and things of that nature, such as the fact the other things that the small, Joy mentioned small. Not to belittle that because there are sensitivities that people have. I know when it's low tide, there's also a huge snow drift waves that drive every night to back in the mountains. I did say that I prefer, I do like the driftway. That's, I just want to make sure I note that for the record.
Sure. No, and I agree. Actually, I thought the discussion on the library was enlightening to me. I didn't realize so many people really favored that location as well. But again, for me, it helps solve the problem of gates and helps solve the problem of the senior center. So for me, we're solving two problems that we have in town. And I don't think I don't want to get into another discussion if this fails, what do we do with gates? That's not for tonight. So if this does pass, I think it helps us move forward to solve two problems. And I commit to you that the senior center will be prioritized and will be the number one issue that is addressed on that site. Is there any further discussion from the board? So we have a motion on the table by Mr. Vignani, a second by Mr. Harris. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Oh, we put our hands up, sure. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay.
The motion was to put a standalone senior center on the Gates property. That's what the motion was. It was seconded and it was passed.
We did a lot of discussion between it.
It was passed. It was 5-0.
5-0.
Unanimous. Yep. No.
5-0. Now, I know there are folks out there that are disappointed. And I hope that the Council on Aging, at least for me, in my perspective, I want to say thank you for everything that you've done, and I hope you can understand that while your charge is to, and Maeve, if you want to talk, I'll get to you in a moment, but if your charge is to take care of the seniors, our charge is to take care of the seniors and the rest of the town. So that's how I have to look at it, and that's why I look at it that way. Please know that I am not dismissing your opinion or your advice this evening at all. Yes, ma'am. Yes, to the mic, please.
How much is the Gates property in its entirety worth if you were to sell it on the open market?
I know we have that, but I don't have it in front of me. Al, do we know how much the Gates property is worth? Was it? Yeah.
Would it be worth?
Somebody may have it.
Would it be worth more than building any senior center anywhere else in
No,
town?
I don't think so. I think it was more like $3.5 million is something that comes to mind.
3.1 million.
I'm looking at
2.8 to 3.1 basically.
Now, is that for just the land or the building as well? The whole thing?
the whole thing.
Okay. So if you sold that in its entirety, you'd have $3 million to put toward a senior center somewhere else.
Good point.
Thank you.
Sure, yes, ma'am.
Hi, half of you know who I am. I'm the athletic trainer at the high school, and I live in Scituate. I've lived here for 24 years. 5 Hearthside Court. Don't bomb my house.
It's for the record.
Okay, 5 Hearthside Court. Deb White Lions. I'm the athletic trainer here. Just in the Gates discussion, I'm not in favor of it for two reasons. The infrastructure is a nightmare. I've had to work in there with teams. But what they're forgetting is the high school actually hosts teams there. On the backfield, that's always the field for freshman soccer, and in the spring for lacrosse. The freshmen are all turf there. You have 5 tennis courts because in high school tennis you have to run 5 courts, and we only have 4 at the high school, so we literally have to practice and run tournaments at the gates. So if you're going to do standalone on the gates property, where would it go? Because you're looking at the field and the courts.
So I'll answer your question, then we're going to commence with the discussion, with the meeting for this agenda item. Most of the plans that we have keep intact the tennis courts. So I think the board is all committed to making sure, A, that the tennis courts remain intact, as well as we're all very committed to field use. And we will make sure that unlike when the high school was built, the field was not replaced prior, we will make sure that the field is replaced before anything. So we're not going to take a field offline. We'll be very cognizant of that. Because I know I agree with you on that, and I know many of the board members also agree with you with regards to field use, so we recognize that.
So do we have a final vote at town meeting as a senior on the sites? I know the selectmen.
So what you will have, what you will have the ability to vote on is, right now, we've got to go find a funding source and do a design and get that option in front of you at town meeting. So at that time, that's when the public will be able to vote on it at that time.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to move on to, oh, I'm sorry.
Tom McCusker, 50 Unit Parish. I would ask the board to reconsider. And if you could do that before.
Does the board want to reconsider?
I'll make a motion for reconsideration.
Do I have a second? Second by Mrs. Canfield. Discussion. If any.
I guess the way I look at it is I say that, bottom line is this. I want this board to be unified in its decision because while we can all disagree about each site, once we walk out of this auditorium, it's going to be basically all of us, those who want to support the senior center, versus some people who are going to say no, and some people are going to ask all these questions. My preference, obviously, is the Driftway and then the library. But my feeling on it is that the board is not going to look, they have looked at other sites, and the board is still strongly of the opinion that they want to remain at Gates. And I'll keep my unanimity with everybody because I think it's better for the board and for everybody involved to understand that while I may think another site's better, I'm willing to compromise that for the better of the town and for its public use going forward. So I just ask if that's the position of the board, and I'm happy to withdraw my motion for reconsideration.
Well, we have a second, so.
If John's withdrawing, that's fine too. I think that you brought up exactly that point. John, as a community, we're not going to have a consensus on the perfect site. This conversation demonstrates that, but we have to have a commitment that we will support moving this forward so that we do end up at the end of the day with a senior center that serves our seniors.
Yes.
J.D. Miller, Chairman of the Board. I'd just like to say, I think I speak for the board in saying that we are looking forward to supporting the Board of Selectmen and moving forward.
Thank you, John. So I have a motion for consideration and a second. Do you want to withdraw or? Oh, Gordon.
Thank you. I would second what J.D. just said. I think we all realize that we have to come together and work together to get this project done. I think Maura maybe mentioned it earlier. I'd like a clear statement that the senior center will go forward without any other building projects to include town hall being melded in with the senior center. I think I heard you say that.
The motion was for a standalone. So
Okay, but-
it's on the record that the motion was for a standalone on the gate site.
Right, but the effort to build that standalone center will take precedence over other projects such as a renovation of town hall, and we get into
Oh,
gates.
absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Yes.
Dale Baylock, again, 74 Willow Park Drive, and I just want to commend each of you, all of you. A decision has been made a few moments ago, a long time ago. I said we needed to get off the merry-go-round. We're off it. Some of us will leave here not as satisfied as with the decision, but a decision has been made to help us all. And I think the key word, I think Karen Clearfield said it earlier, one of you, we need to now move forward collectively. I speak for myself now, and I am happy a decision has been made, and I am going to work as hard as I can to make it come to fruition. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you all seniors, everyone in the town. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Mr. Dennehy, so we have a withdrawal of the, are you withdrawing the motion to reconsider, or do you want us to vote on it? Okay. All in favor to reconsider the motion, say aye. All opposed? Aye. So Lorraine, that goes. Okay. All right. So that commences the discussion and vote for the senior center location, and we just have one more piece of business when we will discuss about the meeting law complaint. No, this is the last thing. So just we want to, for the public record, the board received an open meeting law complaint. The board received an open meeting law complaint that we need to acknowledge publicly, and it is being addressed by an attorney, and response is in place today addressing it. So with that, do I have a motion to adjourn and sign up?
Move to adjourn.
Wait a second. Second by Mr. Magnani, all in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, folks.
Good night, folks.
For staying. Thank you.